The good ones where they have your made-up whatever
have
flavor you have.
They have banana. They have all kinds of stuff.
Do they have banana?
They have one called computer chip.
They have computer chip ice cream.
I think they probably added that in the 80s.
I was driving.
They don't have one called social media whirl or anything like that.
I bet you they do. I was driving to the hotel last night. The graffiti on the bridge said SQL. I said, I didn't get to read the whole message, but I said, I know I'm in Silicon Valley when the graffiti is code. Okay. So I guess we're ready to start. Thanks, everyone. There's some very interesting countdown timers going on in the chat window. We're very glad to be here with you today. My name is Brian Pagano, and I'm the senior architect here at Apogee. And I'm joined today by my colleague Greg Braille.
Yep, I'm Greg. I'm the CTO at Apogee.
We're here in absolutely gorgeous Palo Alto, California. I'm here from the Northeast right now, and I got to tell you, the weather here is absolutely spectacular. Unfortunately, they've locked us in this conference room, and they're not going to let us out until we do a really good webinar. So let's hope for the best. Today, we're going to talk to you a little bit about the fact that your API is not a website. Hopefully, that's not a super controversial title, but I think there is definitely some confusion on that. We're going to have a really good discussion about this. This is one of a series of the API workshops we've been doing. This is the last one listed here, but don't worry, this is not going to be the last one we're going to do. We actually have several more in the works right now, and I'm sure that we'll have news and dates and information about the upcoming webinars coming out. Once again, we really appreciate the great participation we've been having on these things. Hopefully they're fun and you're getting something out of them. We certainly enjoy doing them. We love sharing the love for APIs. The reason why we're doing this webinar is because we're worried that there's some basic misunderstandings about things that used to work for us might not work anymore with the APIs. Things that the mindset that we were in over the last several years might not be the mindset we need to be in right now. So you guys are on this webinar, you're probably already on board, but the issue is you probably have colleagues, you probably have people at your company who aren't so on board, and what we want to do is arm you with some knowledge here of how you can help these people understand that there are some similarities and certainly some synergies between an API and a website, but there are definitely some differences.
Yeah, and in a way, this is an excuse to talk about API design and API technology in a new way. But this is also a great way, if you're on an API team, leading an API team, starting an API initiative, whether it's for internal development or external development or public developers or people within your company, helping other folks in the company understand, just like you said, what's the difference, and why can't I just put a bunch of XML over HTTP on my website and be done.
Well, we've done all this work. We finally got our website running, and so that it works in Chrome and Safari and Firefox, and we don't want to waste all that work. So the good news is there's everything you've learned. That's great. That knowledge doesn't go away, and there are a lot of synergies. So you've learned how to reach out externally. You've learned how to interact with your partners and customers and developers. Yep. So all that's good. But we're going to have to get into a slightly different mindset. Because as it says here, an API, it might seem like it's just the less multimedia version of a website.
Right. It should be easier than a website, right? I don't have to have any of those pesky user interface designers or graphic designers around. I just don't have to worry about fonts. I just put up some XML and we're done, right? Right.
And people who have been in that kind of mindset, would you say that their API programs have been pretty successful?
Not often, no.
No, that was kind of a cupcake question.
Right,
but, okay, so that's really not the mindset you want to be in. And that's what we're going to dig in here for the rest of this webinar is, so what's the same between an API and a website, and what's different? Let's start with how they're similar. Hey, these were green earlier. That's nifty.
I think the other ones later were green.
Okay, all right. We were talking earlier that we've never been in a technology discussion where someone hasn't mentioned apples to apples.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's a metaphor.
Exactly. It's the fundamental rule of performance testing. In the first meeting, someone is going to say, we have to make sure to make an apples to apples comparison. So it's just...
So that's
we've
what we'll
got
do
that
here.
Out of the way.
We've got it out of the way, so anyone who's doing the fruit salad checklist could just check that one right off. All right. So API. So walk us through some of this, Greg. So APIs and websites do have some similarities, especially from a more technical and operational side.
Absolutely, and I think this is, if you're already running a website, you're going to look at this screen and say, no duh. And if anyone on this call doesn't know how to run a website, I'd be surprised. But if people who are inside the world of corporate IT, who have never done anything on the internet, it's gonna be a different world. So 24/7 operations are a big one, right? Even if your API is for internal users, even if you're gonna give it to your employees and they're gonna run it on their iPads and it'll never leave the corporate protected network plus whatever authentication you use for your mobile devices, they're never gonna stop using it. Right? So 24/7 frequent deployment, and the reasons why the reasons why this is, I think, important is because I think there are companies out there that, not companies but teams, who are making the transition from internal IT to API, and they never did run a website. So I think it's important to talk about this stuff as well. The 24/7 one is obvious to anyone who uses a website, but I know there are some websites that I use in my daily life that are banks that are down on the weekend frequently. Not just like, if you deposit your check and it won't show up in your account till Monday, because we're all used to that, but I can't even look at my balance, right? So that hasn't been the web for a long time, right? And it's not APIs either. In fact, you could argue it's even less APIs, right? People are using APIs, especially from mobile apps. People use mobile apps, in the bathroom, next to their bed, when they get up in the morning, when they go to bed at night, when they're on the airplane.
Right.
And then the other thing about frequent deployment, the web world has done a great job of building out policies, procedures, and tools around constant deployment. So websites can be constantly changing to adapt to customer needs. Right. As opposed to the enterprise IT cycle of, great, we've released the version, we're not going to touch it now for a year or 2 years, or if it's in production, you may never touch it again, right? Right. Websites, anyone who's been using the web for more than 10 minutes can tell when they've stumbled on a website that hasn't been updated since 1997. Yes. So it's a new world, and APIs, I think, need some of that as well.
And I think we're going to get into that later in the talk about why it's okay for websites to update the way they do and on the frequency that they do, and why it might be a little bit different for an interface like an API.
You got it.
That's a quick talk about how they're similar, and now we want to talk about how they're different.
There's the green apple.
Right. So again, on the fruit salad checklist,
the Beatles are going to sue us for that one.
The Beatles will not get us right because we've got Apple Computer first, and then we'll have they're not computer anymore, Apple, and then the Beatles, and somebody's probably got a trademark on an orange somewhere.
Yeah, probably in Europe, some sort of telco or something.
There you go. All right, so we talked about some similarities, but there are definitely some differences between an API and a website, and I think that's where we're going to focus a lot of this. So walk us through some of this. So an API is not just a headless website.
It's not just a headless website, and this is the high-level summary, and it doesn't spell anything, unfortunately, but it's got a different audience. It's the interface definition, especially, is going to last a lot longer. The way you do analytics is totally different. The way you do security, there's a lot of similarities, but there are some differences. The way you integrate different technologies and components together is totally different. And the way you test is also, in the case of APIs, fortunately, different.
Fortunately. Okay, let's dive into some of these.
So the audience, right? Websites are used by humans and APIs are used by programmers. Therefore, programmers are not humans, right? I don't know if that
okay, so so the proofreaders of this presentation definitely called that out. Guys, are you suggesting that you're from a logical standpoint, you're categorizing by programmers and humans? Is that the correct categorization? Now,
programmers and ordinary people.
Now, Greg, you and I are both programmers. We both code.
I'm not sure I'm a human.
Exactly. So I think we're poking at ourselves here. I'm sure that most of the coders on the line would agree with us here. There probably are some not so subtle differences, and at least in the context of this conversation, we can definitely put them in two different camps here.
Yes.
Because I think what programmers, what we can handle, and what a normal end user, which I think what we're really talking about here, can handle are very different things.
And furthermore, we're talking about programs, right? So if we get on probably to the next page, we can talk about the difference between something built to be accessed by a program and something built to be accessed by a person. The main thing is that people are incredibly great pattern matching machines, right?
Exactly.
And our brains and our eyes are infinitely faster than the fastest supercomputer. So when you look at a web page and you notice the design has changed, unless it's a really terrible redesign, you can still figure out how to do what you could do yesterday. So
Right.
the designers and the UX people can go to town on the website. I think we just went backwards. They can change it constantly. They can rearrange things. They can update the brand image. They can use analytics to see where people are going and where their eyes are flowing and where they're getting stuck. There's a whole science around that. And it works because people are extremely adaptable in the way that they recognize images.
Right. So you're saying that it's okay if I make changes on my website.
Right.
Like you said, unless it's a complete and utter redesign. If I change a font, if I change an image, if I move one menu item, one place to the right, my users, what we're calling humans, they're going to adapt to that. There's not going to be any explanation needed. They're going to adapt to it, and there's no problem.
And this is a great thing to talk about, I think, in about 3 slides.
Okay.
I just remembered.
Absolutely.
I had this all queued up. And
Absolutely.
I'm like, you know what? I'm really glad we're talking about this. And actually, that's not this section.
But stealing your own thunder is fine. It is a really important point, though. And by the way, bonus points to anybody who identifies the person on the previous slide there. I'm sure somebody in here
I'm sure
knows.
someone can do a Google search and find that.
Yeah.
So, but let's talk about, we are going to talk about changes, but let's also talk about why it matters, why the audience matters, right? Yeah, that didn't take very long to figure that out.
Yeah.
So why does it matter that it's a different audience? Well, it matters that it's a different audience because of the way people are going to react to your API. Programmers care a lot about the design of your API. They care in overt ways. This API isn't designed right. I don't like the way it works. It's too hard. And they care in ways they'll never tell you. They just won't use it. And if you're trying to get third-party and we say this in almost every webinar, if you're trying to get third-party developers to adopt to your API, it better be really easy to come on board. It better be really easy to use. And by the way, it better work. It can't be down on the weekends. It can't have 14-second response times. It can't have 4% of the calls returning an error. It can't require you to learn a new programming language or adopt to a new data format. The fewer barriers you put in place, the better. In that way, it's completely like a website, but the technology is totally different, right? You're thinking about what is the design of my API? How is it structured? Which of the parts of REST does it use, and how does it use them? Right. How do you structure your URLs? Are the various media types easy to consume?
Right.
Is the response time good? Is the uptime good? Is the availability good? Is the documentation good? Are there testing tools? Everything we talk about in every single Apogee webinar, I think, is really, really important for that audience, which is totally different from the people looking at your website who are going to care. Can I find what I want? Does it make me feel good when I look at it? Does it reflect the brand image? Does it appropriately copyright the images? All the kinds of things that web designers care about.
Right.
So maybe this is a philosophical difference, but it's extremely important. If you've never launched an API for outside developers, or even for people within your own company who are looking to use the API, and it's important to you that they actually use it, you've got a pretty big change to make in terms of you're thinking about a different audience. In the internal IT world, you could say, well, you know what? This is how the system works. You have to use it. Don't complain.
Right.
But if your job is to get people who you can't make use your API, you want them to want to use your API. It's a different story. And even inside corporate IT, I think it's more of a world of you want people to want to use this. You can't just, you've been a corporate IT guy for a lot longer than I was.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, you will do this. It's
right. Well, if you're right, if there's buy-in, they're not just going to do it, they're going to be creative. They're going to excel with it. So we usually talk, that was a great point, because I think it is a common theme in most of our webinars. We usually talk about 3 major patterns of API programs. Internal, meaning the API is going to be consumed by people inside the company, partner to partner, and then open, meaning external. It's going to be third party, it's going to be wide open. You would think, and I think most of the companies we work with think that it's mostly that third category where this is really important. I've got to design my API in a way that's really intuitive, really consistent, really consumable, because I want to attract all those developers out there in that marketplace of APIs. But I think your point is excellent, that no, it's also you want your partners to be happy doing business with you and to be quick and deliver successful projects.
And their partners, they may be your customers. We have a lot of Apogee customers whose API is for customers, but it's not for you and me. It's for big enterprises with development teams. You want to reduce the barrier to entry, but even inside IT, I mean, I know I've been involved with projects where the goal of the project is to build a common utility and get the rest of the bank to use it, or get the rest of the insurance company to use it, or get the rest of the government to use it.
Right.
And one way to do it is to make them, and the other way to do it is to make them want to use it. Well, you're going to be a lot more successful inside your corporation if you build something people are excited about using. I'm really excited about dumping this legacy system I have for tracking investment performance, because this guy in the other part of the company has built a really super system, and all I got to do is use his API.
Excellent, excellent. You heard it here first, folks. That people do better when they're excited about something instead of when you just make them do it. It's a simple point, but I think it's often overlooked. And you've got a few questions at the end. Like, does it make me do anything weird? Meaning, is it
meaning program in any weird way.
Right, it doesn't make me go rob a liquor store.
Right, it doesn't make you want to.
Okay, so weird, relatively speaking. All right, and what we generally see, I think the weirdness we generally see is either you're doing something in a non-standard way, or you're inconsistent within your API.
Yeah.
Over here it works this way, and over there it works a different way.
Right.
And that's weird. If I'm a programmer, that feels weird to me. That doesn't work the same way.
Right.
That's what we mean by weird.
Or it doesn't work the same way as other APIs. If I'm aggregating 4 social media sites and 4 of them use OAuth and 1 of them uses WS Security username token profile with a digital signature.
Right.
That's weird.
That's weird, right. So. But however these guys want to code, we're not at all criticizing the weirdness.
No, weirdness is great.
You want to wear a chicken suit, code until midnight, that's your thing. All right. And does it work, and is it down a lot? So I'm guessing the good answers would be yes, it works, and no, it's not down a lot. Those would be the answers we're shooting for? Okay, got it.
Should not be controversial. Okay. Longevity. We had a great discussion about this just a few minutes ago. But let's get back to it, right? Websites change all the time. APIs also change all the time. But an API is an interface.
Yeah, so that's an excellent point.
Interface doesn't change all the time.
Yeah. So we see a lot of confusion on this. I know we were discussing it just this morning. That we see a lot of confusion around this point, because we talk to people about a lot of the motivation for people to get APIs right now is they want to get on mobile, they want to get on new channels, they want to do faster biz dev and partnerships. That's all fast. Everything we're talking about is fast, and we're saying make an API that doesn't change that much. Make an API, and the reason why we're saying that is because an API is an interface. Interfaces shouldn't change much. I think a rule of thumb I usually talk to customers about is, your first year you're not going to get everything right so you're going to go through about 3 revs. After that, maybe 1 per year. And if you're doing a lot more than that, why are you doing that, and how is that affecting your developer adoption?
But even if you change your interface in an incompatible way 3 times a year, you probably really rushed your API program.
Yes.
And you probably didn't think much about design. So that's why we push, like this pragmatic REST thing that we've had API webinars on before.
Right.
Which is, things like URL patterns matter.
Yes.
And if you establish a good pattern to start with, it's easy to add things on, which, by the way, is not incompatible because you're adding to your API. You make it incompatible when you take stuff away.
That's a good point. So you made a change, but you didn't necessarily invalidate.
So if you have 3 top-level resources in your API and you want to add 2 more, you're changing the interface, but not in an incompatible way. You're making the API do more. All the old programs will still work.
Yeah.
However, if you have 3 resources in your API, we really messed up. We should have just made it 1.
Right.
Now that's an incompatible change.
Yep.
Now you're breaking things.
That is an excellent point.
The API used to support XML and now it supports JSON, but we took away XML. Okay, well that's, we added JSON to the XML. Aha, now that's a better story. And let's actually go to the next page in a sec. This is why, right? Programs are not resilient to change.
Right.
If you are an excellent programmer and you crack open Roy Fielding's dissertation and follow every single thing in there on both the API and the client, it is theoretically possible to build something like a mobile app that is resilient to API change. My position is it's real hard, and if you want people you don't know to do that, you're making their job real difficult. Generally speaking, programs built to interfaces are not resilient to change. That's why you can take a program written for DOS and run it on Windows 7. That may be more than any of us need to do and may be total overkill. That's why you can take a program written for Unix 10 years ago and run it on Linux today.
Right.
The interfaces, they've changed, but there's been a lot of attention paid to backward compatibility.
That's a good point. One thing I want to add on the interfaces is that we were talking from the API forward, but it's also true that the API is an abstraction layer that separates all the changes that happen every hour, every day on the back end, right? Because I know the operations folks are thinking, well, we patch every week, we update our databases, we change table structures, we do all kinds of things back there. There's constant change going on, and there's constant change going on in the front end. That API is a nice layer in between that's just a good architectural separation between the things that change a lot and the thing that shouldn't really change a lot, which is the interface. And if the front end and the back end are all aiming at that nice, not very often and not incompatibly changing interface, then everybody's happy.
Yeah, and then again, remember that APIs are just another example of the rule in computer science that every problem can be solved by a new layer of abstraction. Right? An API is a new layer of abstraction. What's behind the API, unless you made some big mistake in implementation, the people using it will never know.
Right.
So the first implementation of your API could be, Bourne shell scripts running on a sunbox in the corner of your desk. The final implementation of your API may be, Amazon Web Service, Ruby on Rails, talking to a little bit written in Java, connecting to some backend system. The people using the API never have to know about any of that.
Right.
Which means you can put out a quick and dirty API.
Right. And
you can fix it later without changing the interface. Again, this is total preaching to the choir, but it's such an important part of APIs. I mean, an API is an interface. If an API is not an interface, then it's just you're using a bit of XML, JSON, and HTTP to talk to a mobile app. That's not an API. An API is when you build and define an interface so that some other person other than the guy who wrote it can actually program to that interface and have some expectation that it's not going to keep changing on.
And in this way, would it be correct to think that APIs are a bit less brittle than a website? Because it seems to me if you change things behind the website, it's very unlikely that everything's just going to keep working as planned.
I will again go back to your background working in corporate IT. We know people build applications by scraping websites, right? We know it's possible. And we all know, can think of 100,000 reasons why that's bad. Websites are designed for humans. Humans are great pattern matching machines, so when the website changes, we, generally speaking, half the time we don't notice. Or we write an angry email saying, I don't believe you changed it, I loved it the old way. But we can still use it. Programs are terrible at that.
Fair enough.
So, okay, change gears, analytics. This is a short and simple one. Great strides have been made in web analytics by putting stuff in the browser, right? You put some JavaScript on your browser, it can interrogate all kinds of information about where you're coming from. You can pull code from different places. You can add cookies. You can do all kinds of nice stuff. Can't do any of that in an API.
Right.
API clients are sometimes they're browsers. An awful lot of the time they're not. They're mobile apps. They're servers.
Right. So our existing analytics tools are just not going to work.
They don't run JavaScript. You can't have your API return a link to JavaScript and have somebody's Java Enterprise Edition server execute that JavaScript just because you put a link there.
Right.
Right, unless they're really, really dumb. You can't return a cookie from an API call and expect that an API client will send it back to you.
Right, but surely all is not lost here. There must be tools out there.
There must be. So what you need is you need to be doing API analytics on the server side. Right, you either have to build it in to your, and we can change the page. You can either build it into your server that runs the API, or you can put a layer in between. And this is not a sales pitch, but we happen to have one of those layers. There are plenty of other ways to solve that problem, but the idea of having some sort of gateway between your API and the back-end systems means that you can abstract away the collection of those analytics. And you can do things, and should be doing things, like looking at the security tokens in the request, whether there's an application key or an OAuth token or a username or a user ID, pulling them out of query parameters, HTTP headers, even out of the request and response body itself, and using that to give you a different kind of analytics than you'd get on a web browser. So you're not going to get what kind of device they're using or what time zone they're in or what language they speak.
Right.
But you are going to get who made each API call, what application made the API call, what user made the API call, what the response time was, how much data we sent back to them, and you can even introspect the API traffic and start to answer questions about your business.
So we can still, so the instinct to do analytics, to get that visibility, is still a good instinct. We just need to change the tool set, and maybe we can get some yumminess that we weren't getting.
Right.
You know, even though it'll be slightly different data, maybe we can get some yumminess we weren't getting. And I know that this comes in handy when it comes time to debug.
Yeah.
Debugging these very remote systems, often partners or third parties involved, can be quite a challenge. Yeah. And this kind of analytics can help with that a lot.
Yeah, analytics and just plain old logging, right? I mean, web apps, websites, web servers will produce a log. Here's the IP address that hit a URL. Here's the response code that came back. That's like a bare minimum. You got to have that. But you want to have more too. What application was it? What user was it? How many other calls did they make today? What kind of error did we return to them? Is there business-oriented information? If I'm selling products on my API, what's the price of those products that I sold? Can I total that up over time? All of this stuff can be done. The great thing about APIs is that unless you've done something weird, cue a few slides ago, your API data is either JSON or XML, and both JSON and XML are self-describing, which means you can put layers of intelligence in between the client and the server without touching the server that can look inside the XML and JSON and give you more information without touching the backend.
Excellent.
That's what we do, but there are a lot of ways to do that.
And it seems there's a couple of really super useful things you can do there.
Yeah.
And that's obviously gives you some business intelligence you might not otherwise have been getting. Mm-hmm. Certainly it gives you information about your API program.
Yeah.
What's popular, what's not, what's getting adopted, what's not. You might find, and I think most of our customers do find, that where they thought they were going to get the big takeoff or they thought they were going to get a lot of traction, sometimes surprises them what people actually do with the API
mm-hmm.
and where it goes viral.
It almost always surprises them.
Yeah.
Especially if it's an open API.
Which is part of the excitement of being in the API world. You never know what kind of clever and creative things people are going to do with your well-designed and well-governed API.
And well-documented and easy-to-learn API. Yes.
Yeah, I thought we'd get a few pitches in there for.
We're just going to say that on every webinar until more people do it. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Security. I didn't know that hackers could turn my home computer into a bomb, but it's in the Weekly World News, so it must be true.
Well, I didn't want you to know. It was a side project we were working on, but you're onto it, so I guess we'll have to find something else, a whoopee cushion or something, right?
You used to work for an insurance company, didn't you? Life insurance, actually. I don't even want to know about that. So, okay, two things here. Actually, 2 points, the kind of 2 slides in one. First thing is about scraping. I know that you can scrape websites, you can hack websites, you can do denial of service attacks on websites, you can look at all the scripts and figure out what it does. The great thing about APIs is that because they're so easy to use and so easy to sign up for and so easy to learn, they're even that much easier to automate in nefarious ways. So if you've got an API call which is, hey, get me the price of my product, just give me a SKU. There's nothing to stop you from starting with 0000000 and going to 999999999 until you have the whole product catalog.
Which is fantastic. APIs, like I said, they're a win-win.
They're a win-win.
They help the bad guys too. Everyone wins with APIs.
APIs are great for bad guys. If you have a method on your API called login that returns you an error code if you got the username and password wrong, that sounds like a great way to launch a password cracking attempt. And if you have an API call, maybe you're an airline and the API call helps you book a flight and get the price. Well, I'm going to book a couple thousand flights tonight and figure out your pricing structure. So I'm not trying to scare people away from APIs. We love APIs. We are Apogee. However, you do need some protection on the real obvious stuff to help protect you against the kind of denial of service attacks and hacking attempts that people can do because the API is so much easier than cracking open your website. And because it remains compatible, and because it's so fast, and it's up all the time, you need to have some protection around that API. So that's where other traditional Apogee webinar stuff like rate limiting, quotas, logging, alerting, all comes in.
Right. So things that probably many commercial websites would have something like 3 strikes and you're out on authentication.
Yes. Yeah.
But maybe not on anything else.
Right, and depending on how they implemented their API, the API developers may not have thought about putting anything like that in the API implementation. They might have just, when you call that, we just talk to the LDAP server, or we just query the database. Well, what's to stop someone from doing that 500 times a second? Well, you need that if your API is important and API security is important.
So bottom line, though, you can easily secure an API. You can make it just as secure, if not more secure than a website. You just have to think about it a little differently. You have to put in some different measures. Yeah.
And the other part is the last webinar we did together about OAuth, right? And I think on the next page there's some stuff there, but so there's the first thing, right? We just said all of this, right? APIs are easy to program. That means easy to program by the good guys and easy to program by the bad guys. And bad guys, all programmers are lazy, and bad guy programmers are also lazy, apparently. Other thing is, and this was the thing for big thing of our last webinar, passwords and APIs have a lot of real worries there. If your API is only being used by trusted apps, people who are in your company or partners that you contract with, you can certainly let those apps have access to the user's real password because you're careful, you trust the developers, maybe you've reviewed the code. If you're thinking your API is going to be used by third-party apps, web apps, mobile apps, you don't want that password getting propagated all over the internet. If your API is going to be used by 10 different web apps, your users don't want their passwords being stored on all of the servers in clear text of all of those web apps. That's where OAuth comes in. And we kind of did the song and dance on OAuth before.
So people could refer to the webinar we did about a month ago on OAuth, where we go into all that discussion of which version to use, when should I use it, when is it not appropriate, all that kind of stuff is there.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's, we'll move on to that. Here's a short and simple one maybe, right? When you build a website, the browser is excellent at pulling content from all sorts of different parts of the internet. Images can come from one place, video from another, scripts from somewhere else, widgets and gadgets and integration, and you can build a giant, brilliant web. Might not even need to host anything, right? You can just do it all with mashups and APIs and scripts and all that great stuff. That's not the case for an API. Programmers who use an API expect they're going to hit your API endpoint and they're going to get a response. They don't expect they're going to get a response that says now hit 10 other places. They expect you to do the work for them. They're going to combine your API with other APIs, but your API itself can't do what web browsers can do. So, maybe this is just a totally obvious point that everyone knows, but I figured it was worth mentioning.
No, it is. I think it's a good point because websites are like a big department store, and an API is going to the mushroom store. When you go to the mushroom store, you expect to get mushrooms, and you don't expect to get everything else. If you need spoons, then you go to the spoon store next door. This is, by the way, my first visit to Italy. When I was picking out my apartment, there was a mushroom store next door to a spoon store, and I thought,
"What do you have? We have spoons."
Well, I thought I'm going to have to be really specific about my shopping list when I go out. I can't just walk around. I can't wander through the mushroom store.
Americans like to just go to one store where everything is there.
Right.
At least men.
Right. But it probably is an apt analogy that they do expect your API to do what it does, and anything in the back end. Now, that's not to say you can't do integrations, but you've got to do it. You've got to make the magic happen in the back end, and your API just returns the goodness that it's supposed to return. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm totally on board with that. That sounds good to me.
Whatever the back end is. The back end could be elephants all the way down, right? You got your API could be everyone can see me raise my hand above my head. Your API can hide innumerable layers of complexity underneath it, and the goal of the API interface is to hide those layers.
Right.
And not to expose them to your users.
Right, so we're certainly not saying that you can't integrate with all kinds of great stuff, your existing partners, suppliers, feeds, all that kind of stuff, but it happens behind the API. Right. The API hides all that.
We have customers where the API hides one server in a database. We have customers where the API hides another layer, which hides another layer, which hides another layer, and so on down 5 or 6 layers until they finally get to the thing that actually does the thing that it does. Right. That's how IT works. There's a lot of different layers involved.
Great. And an API could hide anything.
Sure can.
Old guy with a typewriter in a closet.
There may be an old guy with a typewriter in a closet API. I don't know.
Well, you don't know because you don't know what's behind the API.
Exactly. Mechanical trick. So that's what we're saying, right? You can pull things together on the server side. Can't expect that it's going to happen on the website.
Right.
Okay. This is, I think, the last point. This is a happy point.
Yeah, I know you're excited about this one because those of us who have had to suffer through trying to test the websites, trying to script all that, by the time you get the scripts written, by the time you get all the functional scripts written and you're ready to test the website, marketing's made some changes.
And the tests all break.
The tests have all broken.
So your choice are either never having automated testing for your website or never updating your website. And neither one is a very good choice. Or hiring a team to test your website that's larger than the entire corporation.
Right.
So that's the sad state of automated website testing. And the nice thing about APIs is we already talked about the interface, the consistency, the programmability, how the interface hides a myriad of stuff behind the covers. That means that you can now build really cool automated testing.
So things get significantly better for APIs here.
Yes.
Testing an API, especially since, as we talked about earlier, is an interface. That doesn't change that much, and when it does change, it doesn't invalidate the existing things.
Right.
That means you just add on to your existing test scripts, and you should be good to go.
Right.
Testing an API should be piece of cake next to testing a website.
Next to testing a website. And which means that automated API regression testing is an absolute prerequisite for every successful API.
All right, so the cake is not a lie. Got to get an obligatory Portal reference in while I'm out here.
So yeah, the point being, we can turn the page, but the point being that you have to, and you can, and you should, and everything you read on the web about test-driven programming and automated regression testing and agile software development, it applies to APIs even more, right? Write the test, structure out the API, stub it out, write the tests, and then start mucking with it. And just have those tests not only test the functionality, but test the performance. At least if you have a staging environment, you have automated tests for the regression of the staging performance. This is all stuff that you can do because you can automate that API, just like you can automate regression testing of a Java class or, C interface or whatever it is you're doing. An API is absolutely completely testable, and there's almost no excuse not to have automated testing on your API.
Well, that should be a great comfort for most of our audience here. That brings us back into familiar waters. This brings us back to where we're comfortable and we're used to being able to easily test things.
And if you're not running an API program, you're probably saying, oh my goodness, this sounds really scary to me. And the truth is, yes, but you could look at the test results and you can say, I'm confident that we can deploy the API because we have, whatever code coverage we have, and we've got a great test suite, and it passed. So we can do this.
Exactly.
So here's my conclusion. I'll give you your conclusion too, but not the same as website, right? So what is a great API, right? The implementation moves fast, but the interface doesn't. And someone's asking why, and I think we're going to say why, and we'll talk about that actually. It needs to be reliable, needs to be stable, needs to be fast, needs to be well tested, needs to be easy to use, needs to be resilient to failure and secure.
Yes, but I think we raised some good points throughout this that when we talk about the differences, it seems like APIs came out, and of course we love APIs, so you got to take this with a grain of salt. We are really passionate about APIs, but I heard some really strong arguments for an API program in there. It separates out what changes a lot from what doesn't change. It gives me a quick way to interface with partners and third-party developers. Yep. It's easier to test. It's not difficult to secure. The analytics are going to give me all kinds of goodness. There were a lot of very strong things. What it comes down to, like any new technology or any new paradigm is, we just have to adjust our thinking a little bit. We just have to put on a slightly different hat, take as much of what we've done before, what's made us successful up till now, apply whatever we possibly can from that, and just make sure that we turn a little bit to do things in the way of this new paradigm. And if we do that and don't try to jam a square peg in a round hole, I think that we can actually have a very easy transition to an API program. We've seen dozens and dozens and hundreds of our customers actually make this switch over to very successful API programs.
And had fun while they were doing it.
Had fun while they're doing it, and now it's just what they do. It's not something new or strange or on the cutting edge. It's just what they do. It's part of their business, and generally a very positive, exciting, rapidly growing part of their business.
Yeah. So, I mean, how are APIs and websites the same in that they're attached to your business? So, as a company, most of the time you're trying to make money, unless you're a nonprofit or in the government, and in which case you're trying not to lose money, and then that's what they do. Now, how are they different? The API lets you affect your business in all kinds of ways the website didn't, right? Websites are great for consumer stuff. Websites are great for user stuff. Websites are not as great for integration with partners, with large customers. I mean, telling, if you're a company that does, travel planning and your biggest customers are, 10 giant agencies or companies, saying, yeah, great, we have a special version of the website, which, has a different look and feel and looks more enterprisey. That's not as exciting as saying, we have an API that you can directly integrate with your systems, and you can quadruple the volume you're sending us, by the way, because you're going to wire this into everything you do in your company. Right. So it's third-party developers who are innovating on your behalf. It's customers and partners who are building new apps you couldn't. It's new business opportunities, and I think, again, we've covered this in other webinars. But that's how the API. There are so many different business possibilities for an API that you don't have if you don't have one.
And we're certainly not suggesting that people pick one or the other here. We're not suggesting people have an API, get rid of their website, and just have 20 guys shouting from the roof of their building whenever they have information they want to get out to their customers. Mm-hmm. We're saying that a website has its place, and it's a good thing. It's not an API. And if you want to get in the API game, and if you want to get in these new channels, you really have to change your thinking here.
Yep.
That's what we're saying. You should still have a website, right?
Yeah, I think not having a website.
We're not that far down the road yet.
No, we're not that far down the road.
Until the holographic 5D web is available.
Yeah, right.
You need your classic.
Websites
classic
are not going anywhere.
So we've just had a couple of quick questions, and one comment was around longevity that we talked about earlier, and. You had also agreed with the person asking the question that if you followed all of Fielding's advice, if you did everything that was there, it probably would be pretty resilient. It probably would.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think your only point was that could be overkill for some applications if you know that you're just using it for a subset of functionality.
Yeah, you're going to get us in trouble. This is a subject for a good webinar someday, and I don't know that we're ready to do that yet, but I mean, we talk a lot when we talk about the parts of the REST principles that have been most successful for successful API programs and for our customers. We focus a lot on coming up with a very clear and understandable URL structure and making the API easy to learn and extend and expand. There is a part that says, yes, you can build an API that follows every single REST principle so that every action a client does is based on a link they got back from the server. So if the server wants to change how things work, they just change the links and the clients will magically adapt. I know that in theory you can do that, and I know that people write books about how to do that. I haven't seen a lot of actual APIs and actual API clients that have succeeded in doing that.
It might be a big jump.
I think that there's cool stuff there, but that's
okay.
More to talk about.
We'll hit that in another webinar. But we agree that it's possible. We agree that it also is a bit challenging.
Right. So, that's why, for instance, the pragmatic advice, we talk about putting in version numbers in the URL. Mm-hmm. Not everyone on the internet likes that.
Right.
But it's a way to say, here's V1, we might someday make an incompatible change, and when we do, we'll change this to a 2.
Right.
Anyway.
So how would you answer the question, Greg, that talks about that, websites have been around a lot longer. There's a very mature practice at most big IT departments around how they update the website, how they test the website, all these kind of things. APIs, or at least for most businesses, API programs are a bit newer. how would you react to that statement? That
yeah, and I think there's an organizational question in here that I'm not sure that I've really thought much about. Certainly from a technology perspective, I'm going to keep flogging automated regression testing. Right. I mean, how do you ensure quality? How do you ensure that you didn't make an incompatible change that will break clients, whether you're following Roy Fielding or not? How do you ensure that you are not you didn't introduce a performance regression? Automated testing and alerting and monitoring of all those systems is absolutely important. I don't know what else to say about that. Now, organizationally, what organization is that's a good question.
Right. And we coach a lot of our customers on that about what's been working for everyone else. So we're always happy to share the love of what's working, what are the winners doing, what's working, what's being successful, and like you said, maybe this is even fodder for another webinar down the road.
It might be.
So we had another question that maybe is a little more right down your alley here, talking about, is it reasonable to model like UI-centric operations as an API? Classically, when we think UI, we're thinking more website, right? I mean, is that a reasonable thing to do?
I mean, I think the API has to reflect what service you're trying to offer. So yeah, the questioner said, we have a requirement to have a user like something on Facebook. I mean, to me, it's like you have a resource called likes, and you add a new instance by doing a put, or actually by doing a post. That's actually something that you would have in an API if that's the service you're offering. Now, do you want to structure the API in such a way that a UI designer is going to make the UI just look like the API? No, but I think a good UI design is based on a model, and a good API design is based on a model, and they may be the same model. You might have entities in your model like users, comments, posts, likes, dislikes, and you're going to want to structure the design of your API to match that model. And the sort of the REST principles we've been following around, how resources are nouns and nouns are structured into collections. Those are all things that you can use to almost one-for-one transform an entity relationship model into an API. And a good UI designer might use that same model and build a great UI, but you don't necessarily have to think about what the UI designer is going to do when you build the API.
Got it. You provide the tools and then let people use their creativity to just do whatever they can. There was another question about what's the best flavor of ice cream? No, I'm kidding. That wasn't a real question. The answer is banana, by the way.
Oh, I don't know. I think like either chocolate or vanilla peanut
butter.
I
cannot believe you just said that. Chocolate or what?
No.
What was the second one?
No,
that's not even a flavor.
Peanut butter with vanilla, man. You're really missing out.
No, banana. For those listening, banana was the correct answer. So at this point, I think we've gone through most of the questions that I've seen.
Yeah, someone wants to discuss technical questions, and yes, we can. I don't know if there are any that we've missed.
Right. So what I was thinking is, we are always happy. We are always happy to talk. If you guys can't tell, we love talking about APIs. Mm-hmm. We are always happy to share the experiences that we're having out there on all fronts of the API world. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime, including on the webinars. We would love to talk about it. We'll talk about technical questions. We'll talk about philosophical questions. We'll get into the best flavors of ice cream, whatever you want. We're happy to talk. Okay. So feel free to reach out to us. So that being said, I want to really thank everybody again for attending these things. We've been getting great participation, a lot of good feedback on these. We're hoping you guys are enjoying them half as much as we are. They're absolutely a blast. I love coming out here and doing them. Greg, I want to thank you for doing this with me this morning.
Yep. Thanks for coming up to California.
I love being out here too. So it's always I feed two birds with one seed. Notice the PC metaphor there. I get to be out in California and I get to talk about APIs.
Yep.
It's all good.
And I will say, as we always do, we're going to put the slides up. We're going to put the video up in a couple of days. We're also we'll do a blog post where we'll answer some of these questions. I see a couple of questions coming up really about what the Apogee products do, both Apogee Enterprise and the Apogee free products, including OAuth API. We will definitely address those in the blog or in Twitter or whatever is most appropriate. So we're not ignoring all the questions we see, and we'll make sure you all get answers.
Okay, sounds good. So everybody keep an ear out for the upcoming webinar series. We've got some more stuff in the works. We'll be announcing them shortly. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you all have a truly great day. Thank you.
Thank you. See you.